next one we have Kurt Cordis to talk about autoethnography methodology. Thank you, Kurt.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. And thank you, Alex, for that presentation. And I think I'm going to switch it up on the fly a little bit because there's a part of my presentation that connects. So bear with me. The other thing I would say is I'd really love the conversation at the end because that's kind of why I'm here, is to learn. So any exchange, any ideas are welcome. And the last thing to preface is that anytime I'm talking, I say we're here to lift each other up, not take each other down. And I will be talking about concepts which are a little sensitive, like race. So let's just keep that in mind. And I love criticism, but criticism in a positive way to lift all of us up. So if we're all good with that, cool. Again, I'm being a little bit different because I'm presenting my methodology rather than my actual thesis. And I think it's more appropriate at this point. I'm just pre-confirmation, so I'm still exploring, but at the end of the exploring. Very quickly about me, Canadian born and raised. My parents are from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and actually the shirt I'm wearing is the actual location of my little island in the Caribbean. Also British as well, so I'm kind of all over the place. Son, brother, husband, stepfather. I came to Aotearoa, New Zealand to be with my wife, my now wife. But we're both Canadian, long story. I am an aquatic educator. I am very much aquatic. I'm a scuba diver, sailor, skipper, swimming instructor, yada, 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 yada. And that will come into play. I am an educator. I work in global citizenship, especially with youth and social justice. I am into research. I have been before, now as a PhD candidate. And I am a rising pracademic. Hold that thought. I'm going to get to that one. So autoethnography, very, very quickly. Auto, self, ethno, culture, graphy, to write down, but what I would say is to communicate, to find a form where you communicate that information out. Sounds really, really simple. It's huge. So there are so many different kinds of autoethnography. And one of the reasons why I want to do this, because it seems like it's not very popular yet. In this part of the world, it's popular in other parts of the world. You got evocative, bringing out emotion into things. Your theoretical, collaborative, two authors actually working on an autoethnography together. Critical, I'm moving more in that direction as well, the social justice aspect. I'm going to highlight the two at the bottom. Those are more recent books that have come out. One is Transformative Autoethnography. I link into that from my educational side, transformative learning. The classic Mesereau, but then also extending into Chad Hogan, who's done more recent research on what transformative learning is. And basically, transformative learning is how do we change minds? How do we move from one set dynamic in your mind to another set? And the symbiotic is Dr. Leanna Beattie over in the UK. And the symbiotic is, I would compare it to the Bruce Lee of autoethnography. There is no style. It's a matter of bringing in different styles and putting them together to construct them to make your own approach, which is very much where I'm going with what I'm doing. But to explain autoethnography, it's actually a little difficult unless you have an example. So I'll give you an example. This is not one that I have done, but one that I could do. That dolphin, her name is Chippy. She's a friend of mine. I worked with her in the Bahamas in 1992, 93, I think it was. It was myself alone on an island with two Haitian guys and 4 dolphins, 2 moms and 2 babies. 8 weeks, 400 hours of contact time, 16 hours a day. Watching, learning, swimming, feeding. You learn a lot. And it's a situation which is not common. I don't know if anybody here has spent a lot of time with dolphins. And you learn a lot of things. The idea of an autoethnography is to actually capture those kind of moments, capture those kind of things, and what can we learn from them? And here's where it gets sticky because the auto, and there's a lot of criticism for this, it's self-gratification. It's an autobiography. You're just writing down a story. That's not what autoethnography is. And Leanna Beattie actually spells it out in her book, self-study versus autoethnography. If you're doing a self-study, it really is about you. And autoethnography is not about you. You're pulling information from you to feed into larger theory. and feed into academia. Two great perspectives. So the things that you would be looking at it for is bridging understanding between different things. And there's a lot of stuff that happened to me with these dolphins that I could have done that. Underrepresented perspectives. Not only the experience I was having is rare, but the fact that me, as my race, my ethnicity, my culture, having that experience is rare, and capturing that. Professional practice, me in aquatics, I actually wanted to train dolphins until that. And then I very quickly realized, nope, I'm not doing that because it's not right, it's not just, it's not fair. So all of these things I can pull out and then to write those down so that it is actually available in the academic space to be built upon, to learn from, to change things. That is, to me, what autoethnography is. So for me, being aquatic, being in that space, working the past 8 years in Aotearoa in water safety and drowning prevention, I very quickly realized, and that when I started, there was a work by Dr. Kevin Dawson that I read, which is a history of West African aquatics. And I suddenly realized, hey, wait a second, all this talk about black people not being able to swim, or other cultures not being able to swim. Historically, we were all not only swimmers, but we were masters of the sea. We were out there. And that history was captured. And I'm going, hey, wait a second. A lot of what's in that book connects to me. So how do I show that academically? How do I actually break that down? So what I want to do is a longitudinal autoethnography, looking at my life and actually connecting that West African aquatics through my West Indian heritage and what I experienced in the West Indies, because all my aquatic experience is from the West Indies, and then through to my modern practice. Ambitious. I know it's ambitious. And I do project management as well, so I have a lot of off-ramps and stuff we can do this. But the idea that you can make those two connections is going to be a game changer because it's not out there yet. And then the other part of autoethnography, so I was talking about you're actually connecting to theory. It's not just about you. But it is about you. So one of the things I was doing in my exploration, I call it literature exploration as opposed to literature search. I was exploring, and I really wanted to connect with West Indian authors and West Indian frameworks that I could actually link into as myself and my heritage. Anybody familiar with Stuart Hall? Little bit? And this is really interesting because in the UK and Europe, he's huge. He's actually known as the father of cultural studies on that side. Jamaican born and raised, and then moved to the UK. He captures that just post-colonial aspect of what was going on. And he's like the grandfathers I grew up with and the family I grew up with and the parties that I went to in the West Indies where people are talking politics in the living room. His oration is very much like that. So I connect very deeply with him. And in 1997, he did a lecture and he proposed that concept, race the floating signifier. And this is where me and Alex kind of start to connect here, that whole idea of the floating signifier. It's actually grounded in a linguistic theory, the idea of the sign, the signifier, and the signified. I'm not a linguist, so I appreciate any feedback on this. But it's grounded in that, and then it moved into the anthropology, and then it moved into the psychotherapy, and then it moved into the social-political, and then Hall took it and went, aha, this is kind of how race works. Because the idea of, and W.E.B. Du Bois, the, not skin, the color, hair, and bone, the things that we look at, that we define race, float and change over time, depending on culture, depending on context, depending on where you are. I have a lived experience for this. If I go to Egypt, I have to convince Egyptians that I'm not Egyptian. I open my mouth and speak, and they go, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you speaking Arabic? You know, that's how powerful that connotation is. Flip that into the other direction when you walk into a store and they say, did you pay for that? It's the other side of the coin. And so basically he said, let's use this framework. Race is like a language. So this is one of the frameworks that I'm holding on to, and I can actually go back through my lifeline and use as one of the things I'm using to kind of break this stuff down, specifically from an aquatic perspective. because as far as I can tell, that hasn't been done yet. And also in aquatics, it's very rare. This whole idea of race is something that we don't want to touch it. It's very uncomfortable. But it actually is the source of a lot of the problems that we're having. So we need to look into it. So going on that, the reason why I would do an autoethnography, why am I coming into a PhD, and the two kind of have a relationship. Simon Sinek, start with why. Anybody familiar with that? A little bit? So no, it's not academic, but it's a really good concept where whenever you're doing something, you look at your why. Why am I doing what I'm doing? For me, coming into a PhD, it's two specific things. One is the fact that I'm looking at a PhD as a chance to gain a language that I can use. So Henry Giroux, education theorist over in Canada, said until he read Paulo Freire, he didn't understand what he was trying to do in the classroom. Then he read the book and he went, aha, I can actually explain it now. I've had a year of fun doing that, of looking at stuff and going, aha, that's what I'm trying to do, and putting this stuff together, and now I have a language where I can explain it. But the other part of it is to give back. To give back and also to represent, because let's face it, these are the halls of power. A lot of what's going on here, a lot of what you're doing as PhDs and as professors is moving things in society, in culture. And if there isn't representation and we don't have different ideas, nothing's going to move. So that's why I'm here, and autoethnography directly connects to that. And somebody gifted me with the idea that, hey, you know what, you're a pracademic, practical academic. And I think autoethnography, again, fits into that aspect, because I think academia should be a revolving door. We should be coming in and then going back out there and applying it, and then coming in and taking what we learned from out there and bringing it in, and then go out again. And there's got to be room for that. So in this book, a whole bunch of different chapters, but basically what's coming out of it is there's room for pracademia in academics. And it's not to replace the other parts of academics, but we need to make room for it. And one of the methodologies that we might need to make room for is autoethnography. So that's pretty much it for me. I'm going to end with this, because this is another thing where you look at this, you can't fight the sea, man, you just go with it. My arms are too short to box with God. It's too great a force. This gentleman is a surfer from Africa, and I didn't get the whole picture, but he's actually standing on the surfboard with the boxing gloves. How this evokes me with my experience and my aquatic knowledge and what I've seen and the 30-foot waves that I've gone through in a boat will be different than another person. And I'm not saying better or worse, but that idea that I'm going to be reflexive and I'm going to look critically and I'm going to look carefully at why I feel what I feel when I read that and when I see that picture. And then bring that back into theory and say, how can we learn from this, and how can we do better aquatic education? How can we do better drowning prevention? How can we do better messaging based on that? So that's it. Thank you.